Hey guys, it's been a little while since I've actually put together a video, but I wanted to do one because I've been really looking at bases lately. I've been trying to find the one base that can do everything I want, and I don't think it exists. But that brings me to a different topic today, and that's why five-string bases really aren't that great often. I am a big fan of five strings. I would play only five strings if I didn't have any issues with them, but I do have some issues with them, and that's the purpose of this video. So, this is not coming as one of those people that says Jocko only needed four. This is coming from a five string player and fan. I'm just showing you this, okay? I'm just showing you I have one and I really enjoy it. All right, we're going to start with discussing a few things about five string basses that Low End Lobster touched on in a video of his that are important to what I'm going to say here today. So, a five string bass does have a chance of being a little bit heavier, a little bit more expensive, and a little bit more expensive every time you buy strings because you're putting on extra strings. Those are worth noting, but may not be a huge deal breaker, especially when you find the right bass like this one, which is Swamp Ash and pretty light, probably lighter than the four string I was holding a second ago. But then you have basses that are like my other Schecter, my white P Custom, which is 11.2 pounds. So, you can add a significant amount of extra weight. That's a big deal to a lot of people. And it can be for me, depending. I would prefer something 10 pounds or under, probably under 9 pounds. 9.5 is, an ideal sort of weight for me. I still enjoy my Schecter and I still play it, even though it is big and heavy. But that's just scratching the surface of where I want to go with this video. We're going to get into string spacing because I feel like a lot of issues of a five string bass come from this. I should note that my first five string bass was an Ibanez, and the Ibanez has a 16.5 millimeter string spacing. A standard four string bass has 19 millimeter. Almost every four string bass has a 19 millimeter string spacing, but five strings take a huge variety of different approaches to how they want to fit the extra string on here. I got used to my Ibanez, and as such, I prefer the approach to squeeze this together so that when you add an extra string, your neck doesn't become huge. There are a lot of bass players that like to not mess with the spacing because they're used to a four string. See, this is where I differ. I like the tighter. This one is somewhere in the neighborhood of 16.5 or 17 millimeters at the bridge. This is pretty close to ideal for me. However, my other Schecter, again, like a lot of things about that bass, has the 19 millimeter spacing at the bridge, which results in the neck being really thick right here to accommodate. See, I find the reason that I like this tighter spacing is because of the neck right here. When I end up having an extremely wide neck in this area, it just doesn't feel right to me. Now, having a pretty wide neck in this area feels right to my hand. So in that instance, I really prefer a five string over a four when holding in this area because I like the width. But see, both of my five strings have a 45 millimeter nut width. So, there's some that go beyond that as well. Some of these issues aren't exactly confined to a five string, different nut widths applies to four strings as well. You've got something like a 38 right here. See how narrow this is? Versus a 42 for a P bass. This feels really good, but it's tiny. So it's a little bit unusual, but a lot of people prefer this. My thing isn't so much the width here; it's the fact that the neck on the back comes down to this skinny little point where this is has a volute and it's nice and rounded and it just kind of feels better in the hand. Both are playable, you know. You just gotta adjust in the moment. Next thing relating to the string spacing is this. Pickup sizes for 5-string basses are not universal. So, for an example, these are EMG 40 size pickups. They're actually 40 CSX. And they work in this bass, but the bridge position route in my other Schecter requires a EMG 45 size because of how wide it is. That's fine and dandy. That covers a lot of ground if you have a pickup with a bar magnet like this. However, if I wanted to get something like Nordstrand pickups like this, they're standard pickup in this size. If I want to get like a big split or a big rig or a dual coil, comes in 18 millimeter or 19 millimeter string spacing. You have to pay extra if you want to get 16 and a half or 17 millimeter. So that creates a little bit of an issue, is paying extra or not being able to find the pickup you want at all with a tighter string spacing than what they call standard, because there is no standard. That's the problem. The Music Man size like this for a 4-string, 90% of the time is this shape with the little ears. Getting up close here. So 90% of the time, a 4-string Music Man style pickup will have these 2 ears and then this one down here, and we'll have a standard string spacing of 19 millimeters. And the only divergence I've seen from this for a 4-string would be if these two are attached in the middle by almost like a little ramp, like in the Sterling by Music Man 34 series and up. But, you know, even USA Stingrays and stuff have this shape. Now, when you get to the 5-string variant of this, then you have the rounded cover or the cover with the ears, and they have varying widths and string spacing depending on if you're getting a Sterling by Music Man or a Music Man or a Lakeland or whatever else. So you can't get anything standard for the bridge because they're slightly different from each other. Creates a little bit of an issue depending on what you have. Again, pickups with bar magnets under, like an EMG, like I have here, avoid this issue. But if you want to buy something like the Aguilar AG5M, it comes in wide spacing only, so it's not going to line up correctly. Look at Bully the Kid has a video where he put one in a Sterling by Music Man, this color actually, Ray 5. He had to buy a different bridge for the bass to space his strings out enough to where they would line up over the pole pieces in his pickup. Because he bought an Aguilar, and Aguilar is just, you get the spacing, period. I like the fact that a lot of manufacturers like Bartolini, Aguilar makes the DCB pickups, which have bar magnets. EMG has bar magnets, but they're not all the same length under, depending on what you get. A lot of them try to avoid some of these issues. So you do have options, but it does create a problem when you want, like, let's say a Nordstrand big man for a 5-string, and you have to figure out the spacing of your strings. They've tried to accommodate this by having a wider spacing for Lakeland and a skinnier spacing for OLPs and Sterling by Music Mans, and you can see that on their site, but it does still create a little bit of a problem. So my next gripe with 5-string basses is that you end up messing with some of the iconic designs of certain basses. I'll take this for example. The Music Man Stingray has an oval pickguard, a control plate. this is the way it was designed from the beginning. And I'm sure you've all seen Stingray 5s. They don't have this setup unless you find a Stingray 5 Classic. They have a wider offset sort of pickguard that covers the control plate. Comes down here. They even have a different carve up here. Everything is slightly different. I think it still looks cool. It's not as great as this to me, but you see certain bases in that sort of range, and the way that it affects the look of the base, it could be slightly off. Next gripe is the approach to the headstock. So I'm not like a stickler for being symmetrical or whatever, but a lot of bases either have 4 in a line or 2 and 2. My Sterling here is a oddball, weird example. This bothers me a little bit, but not enough for me to get rid of that base. That's a fantastic base. The design of this, I think 5 in a line looks best, but it creates some issues, as is evidenced by my other Schecter, which I'll continually bring up because I love that base, but it has 5 in a line tuning machines, and it's 35-inch scale. So it is extremely long. It doesn't fit very well in most gig bags. I do have one that it fits in. It's still long and obtrusive, and it's just really weird in there. It actually sticks out so much that I ended up bending the G tuning machine. And that base may be a little bit of the cause of some of my other issues here, because you see, for a low B string, a 35-inch scale is great, and it makes things feel better and tighter. And I don't even mind it causing the frets to be huge down here, because it works with the size of my hands and stuff. I know it doesn't jive with some people, but it causes an issue with the strings that you buy as well. See, this 3 and 2 is probably my preferred 5-string layout, because the length of these standard strings, you can see the wrap ends just barely past the nut. So if I bought any strings that were not wound as long as these, which are Ernie balls, they wouldn't work. I particularly had an issue trying to buy strings with from Roto Sound, and they wouldn't make it past the nut on my my other Schecter. So this ends up resulting in a 5 in a line headstock, causing you to barely be able to reach the G string tuning peg. Even when you buy the super long strings, I can barely reach that one and maybe get two winds around. So maybe this is more on the string manufacturers, or maybe it just comes down to the difficulties of trying to mess with the design here. This is why I think this is sort of outdated. Maybe headless is the way to go, the way of the future. I'm not really sure. Headless kind of does avoid some of these issues, actually. Not every model from every manufacturer comes in a 5-string, and this is, I guess, probably more so on the manufacturers than it is really the design. But that bothers me because there's some really great basses that I would like to see in a 5-string. Particularly, I've looked at some stuff from like Reverend and things like that you have to get a 4-string. Now, part of the reason that I'm making this video is I've realized that for me, my need for a low B string to get the low notes below E is really why I play 5-string, other than the discussion I told you about like nut width and the rounding of the back of the neck. So I can get by with a 4 tuned to B and get the low D and C and B down here. And I do not miss out on a G. Now, I know there's a lot of people that play technical music that wouldn't be able to go low and eliminate the high string because of the way that they've learned things. The positions, you know, being able to walk all the way down rather than climb up and then jump up here to, you know, play the next few notes. But you know, kind of music I play, I just need the low notes, and I don't need to jump around all over the place. There's something I wrote that started on the 4th fret of the G string, and I just move it up here and play it, and I'm still able to accommodate it because I'm not playing fast technical, I don't know, progressive music or anything like that. I'll end off the video with a couple of things that aren't really so much gripes as just like honorable mentions. A standard bass has a certain feel to the strings, and when you jump to a 5 string or even a 4 tuned in B here, you may take a little while to get used to having a floppier low B string. A string used to reach that low of a note will feel a little floppy. You can do like I do and just buy down to a 130 gauge rather than a 125. I could even jump up a little bit, or buy something with a 35-inch scale that helps with the tension. This bass gets by well with a shorter scale, a 34-inch scale, and using a 40, hang on, this is a 65 to 130 gauges. I find that it picks up this low B string well and is defined because of the pickup type and the pickup placement back here. I'm a big P bass fan, and I have a little bit of a struggle with a lot of P bass pickups for a low B. It may be trying to balance the split coil with having a lower note, or maybe even the design of where it's positioned is only meant to pick up certain notes and frequencies. I don't know. I have a little bit of a gripe with it. That's not so much a 5-string problem. That's a 5-string P bass problem. And I've done some things to try to figure out where to go from that. And that's one of the reasons that I'm on the hunt for my ideal sort of bass, because I enjoy a Stingray type for low notes and for aggressive type music. But then there's something about a P bass that just works for me. Those are my two favorite basses, would be Stingray and P bass. And it's so hard on the market to find a bass that has both. And if you look at a Reverend Mercalli, for example, you have 2 pickups. One's like a Stingray, one's like a P bass under a Stingray cover, but they push this pickup back. So for me, this position means everything, and a P bass position interferes with this. So there's going to be compromises either way, and I'm finding that maybe the route to go for me, I mean, for now I just record with 2 different basses, but if I want to do a live show and have my Stingray sounds and my P bass sounds, I'm probably going to end up getting a 5-string Sterling by Music Man with 2 pickups. Or I'm also considering, if you've seen Nordstrand and some others make a Stingray pickup that is 4 coil that you can split to just the front coil here, and it would seem like it's a single coil, but technically, because it's got 2 coils under it, it has a split coil vibe, and the positioning here isn't too far back from the P bass spot. I find the sound pretty nice, so I'm considering like a big split man or an MM 5.4.